Mendo, den.
Ah,
Do Mendo.
네.
Mendo. Oh. No questions today.
야, 거기 좋아요, 요새.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. What's the question? The question is? Okay. Gandhi. Kabaducheki tungaldan, ducheki tungal, kabaducheki tungaldan, ducheki tungal기, 개발이, 저좀부 톱소나, 되니 kabaducheki tungal, 타송아, 이 이년 두cheki tungal 요레스, 소아, 되니 디 저좀부 데 코르라 요르페사, 코르와 저좀부 코르와라 요르페사,
과말이.
Kappa ducheki dung, kaza ducheki dungangina Korean be cap song caps cap.
타워 두지 동아 세다. 동아 코아 젠 풍부 세가나. 가서래. 타워 두지 동아지 풍부도 코아를 돼. 봐. 네, 비자지 붙이려 와 말이. 아주 붙이려 와 말이. 두지 동아 세나래니 두대 좀 구요와래. 동아대 봐 요와래. 동아대 봐 요와에 다 래니 그 샤완 전지 풍부지와래.
Kappa ducheki dung 디
서지 동안 매아체. 래니 그 샤완 전지 풍부지 요와체.
내년기 시공.
코와스나 지당 동아 코와 젠 풍부 세버 그 래니지 왕게 양수 천만 년점 조위.
So here the aggregates which are appropriated by karma, by contaminated karma and mental affliction, that those are the aggregates that are the suffering, which is the pervasive nature of being created or constructed. Okay, so the now that form of the aggregates is that which entails again taking rebirth within samsara. So if one has that form of the aggregates, then one is impelled to take rebirth within samsara subsequently. But because the arhat has eliminated that state of the aggregates for that arhat are now freed from the they're caused by the aggregates in that during that arhat's life have been produced by karma and contaminated karma and mental affliction, but the aggregates that they now have are no longer going to entail again being reborn within a samsaric state of existence. Therefore, they're not called, or they don't have that characteristic of being of the did you? 인선 조어 제복이
인점 조어를 잡아 그 인점 풍부되기 아니 양 뒤치마요 말아봐 와 풍부 내니 좋아 풍부대 세도 담바대 뒤치마 때문에 좋아라 봐
때문에 라
이 체도고 알아
긴체도 그래
내니 왕고 좀 풍부되기
So thus then generally we say the aggregates or samsara is the aggregates that arise and from under the control of dominated by mental afflictions and contaminated karma. So the arhat but this is highly technical and I'm not getting exactly or able to struggling to translate it into the comprehensible English. The arhat has eliminated the aggregates such in the sense that they are the continuity of that stream of existence which is produced by contaminated karma and mental afflictions. That is, they've cut off the continuity of that such that the aggregates that they now have, or the state of their aggregates in which they've actualized nirvana, will not continue to produce rebirth within the samsaric process. However, the aggregates that they have, the state that they still have the aggregates in, is itself a product of prior mental affliction or is a product of the aggregates when they were produced, when they were still producing that continuity of samsaric existence. I don't think I really, did you get that? You got it? Okay. I don't know if I did, but if you got it, that's good. Now, first there were no questions, and now there are going to be a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Deep. Come on. Okay. Nga sana nga tani tu yupe nga tang dakzingi mikyu di kasa dakzingi shinyu di
아니 셰윤이
di rangi ki tupe nga ya rangi tupe nga kara yorba tani tu yupe nga tang di tani tu yupe nga yosona dini inji minji shetan kasa chakdang kegi를 배스 타니 두 옆에
타니도 예병아 옛날 차단 제 고구마래 대 산재 줄여 요래
라 상계
산재 줄여 타니도 예병아 요래
노스 이니 디비디레 착바당 당와 연나 인지민지 녀몽 요를 배사
차단에는 니모 요래
노스
차단 니모로
okay so the way I rephrased the question was saying that if you have the idea of the conventionally existent I, does that necessarily entail that it produces attraction and aversion? Okay. Now, when one has the misconception of the I, as if the I existed by means of its own intrinsic nature or by means of its own intrinsic identity, then necessarily that will produce attraction and aversion. Okay, that's what I said. And see, attraction and aversion, as there are by definition are mentally afflicted states of mind. So, for example, then Rinpoche said, a Buddha has the sense. We want to say concept exactly, but they possess a conventionally existent I, but they don't have attraction and aversion, which are these mentally afflicted states of mind.
타니도 예병아데 아니 가사 탐지라 타니도 예병아서 나조 나사 나데 레소바보 제운용하보 어디디 타니도 예병아래 좋아 타니도 예병아체 다 대가랑 졸라 가 찾고 와래서나 라왕 코 나데 아니 라왕도 그냥 칼라야 말해봐 맞대봐 라왕도 추가 찾고 와래 라왕도 추바데 다 같이 다 들어.
So here, then, like the I, now all persons, and this includes Buddhas, have an I. They like the Buddhist, or everyone says, I go, I come, I eat, I sleep, whatever. That sense of I is correct. It accords with reality, and it's indispensable actually. But then, for we ordinary people, what happens is that conventionally existent I, which does exist, is we overlay onto that a sense of autonomy, as if the I existed in a way that does not depend upon other things, as though it existed without depending or being contingent upon other things. And it's based on that notion, distorted or erroneous notion of the I, that we generate attraction and aversion, contaminated or mentally afflicted forms of attraction and aversion like that.
Yeah.
The essence of my question was what is it about the dependence or the seeing thing as not dependent that leads to the attraction and aversion?
Oh, okay. So then ngarzen di jenlama tuba jenlama ngarzen di jenlama tuba ya rangwangwa rangwangwe namachin yorba jenlama jenlama leba
Yeah.
jenlama rama leba ya rangwangwa yorba ngajin
ngajin
ngajingi
가르세
ngajingi ngajin
개유 아 셴라라 마야
shenra ma leba
ngajin 기 셴유 세나 데 셴라라 마야바데 ngade 셴라라 마야바데 ngajin 기 셴유 다더래 와 ngade 셴라라 레와라 라 풍보를 때는 샤고라 와
di shenla ralam shenla
셴라라 마야바
shenla ragma leba di kasa di kandisi chakdang kigiresa kandisi chakdang kigire di shenla mara lebi nambachin yorba di
됐으면 셴라라 마야바들 차탄지 쓰고 말했대 요 말에 차탄지
amare
와 코 가자로 와 셴라라 마야바 짐비 짐바데 안진디로 와
zimba di kandisi chakdang kigire
그냥 앙앙앙 랑시 주와 증거와 인사 안에 랑라 랑조라 차바 라 안에 셴조라 타 가상을 말봐 니군디 자와네 태안 대마리데 텔라 아서 대마리데 텔라자 제당 주 다연나니 셴두시 다샹샤라 진다 자자라 나 셴라라 마데 와라완데 지가랑 앙앙 냐바기 아니 나 디기 달라 차바지 쟁거래 봐 되게 안에 차바당 세단이 오게 된 거예요
so here it's so
셴라라 마다디 마점바치 인진디기
denzindi
안진디
zimba yorwa so here then it's this misapprehension of the I as if it existed autonomously or not depending upon another other that which is other than itself. Okay, because in reality, the I depends upon the aggregates that it's designated upon. It doesn't exist without depending upon its basis of designation. So that misapprehension of the I, as if it existed in this autonomous fashion, causes us to it's not so it's the misapprehension of the I as existing autonomously that induces us to discriminate, saying that this is my side and that's the other side, in the sense like these are the things that benefit me. This is like good for me, and that is bad for me, or that's my enemy. So we discriminate between friend and enemy and so forth. That which is helpful or that which we judge to be good for us. And then, based on that judgment, then we develop attachment, attraction and attachment, desire and so forth to that which we judge to be beneficial or on our side, and we develop aversion, animosity, anger, hatred, and so forth towards those and things and people that we judge to be in opposition to us. So it's the notion of the I existing in this autonomous fashion that induces these mentally afflicted responses to things.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If contaminated karma is not exhausted except by its ripening, then does contaminated karma persist in the continuum of a Buddha? And if not, how does the Buddha get rid of it?
Okay. Sakcheki sana sakcheki sangeki gu le yoresa.
No.
Sakcheki
아제 루산제 메요 말이.
sakcheki di kasan sakcheki mempa matok drebu mempa matok zepa yomaresa.
그래서
sakcheki drebu mempa matok zepa yomaresa.
저걸 예민만 먼저 세워요 말았으나 가르치래.
sakcheki legi drebu mempa matok zepa yomaresa. Chetsang di sangeki gulas sakcheki le yoresam gidus.
그래서
그런
아제 레그 도움만 먼저
zepa yomaresa.
아니
Chetsang di sakcheki le mempa matok sepa yomarena,
아니,
mena,
진짜.
ini sangegi gyul yore samgidus.
산제선 인지거리 사제래 요 말이스. 와 사제가 내가 더 민바요. 아래 더 사제가 내가 더 진배 쳐와요 말이.
Rebu jimbi la.
사제가 내가 더 진배 쳐와요 말이. 와
Rebu
전부 진배 민바스기로 봐.
no.
사제래 요 말이스. 아니 사제가 내 세버려 버려 쓰기로 봐.
Mare di samslu dire sakchegi le drebu mempamatok drebu how you say like drebu chimpa drebu like giving the result.
사제래 좀 민바요 아래 사제 개발래 그좀 민바요 아래 사제래 개발래 좀 민바요 아래 아니 미개발래 좀 민바요 아래 사메글래 지나미 그좀 요 말이.
No. Okay.
내려다.
So basically, no, that's not the case because there's various ways that the contaminated karma is extinguished. I mean, there's the potency, you could say, is exhausted through maturation, but there are also, if I understood what Rinpoche said correctly, there are also ways that it's eliminated without it actually coming to maturation.
나 사제지 내지 대부 세세에 사제 미개비 내지 대부 동아지 아니 판기회나 아니 대부 동아데 조와든 조차소나 영차소나 아니 미개비 내지 남이 대부도 조와라 와. 그봐 그 남이 대부 세바 남이 대부 조와나 남이 대부 세스라 쇼그레다데 그봐 예비 내지 남이 대부도 줍니 아니 텐데 동아데 조 세손 조소나 동아지 세바스 해초그래.
So you can say then that yes, it is the case. In the lamgi sakcheki legi drebu.
사제기 내지 남이지 대부대 개위를 빼나 미 저와 펜저기 내지 남이지 대부 미팡 저와데 팡 차소나 아니 미 저와 조나 디데 남이지 대부도 조와래. 와.
So, however, I mean, okay, so it is the case that that one way in which the effect of contaminated actions, contaminated karma, ceases is through its maturation. That is, when it produces its result. Like, for example, if you have some contaminated karma that produced life as a human, when that specific karma produced your rebirth as a human, then at the end of that human life, when one dies, then the effect, the maturational effect of that action has run its course, is exhausted, and won't operate any further in that respect. But that's not the only way that contaminated karma is stopped. I mean, you can, for example, you can stop doing the actions, creating contaminated karma through, and that will stop producing it, and then the results of it will cease to arise as well.
Oh yeah.
John, yesterday,
Wait,
if I heard correctly, Rinpoche said that simply by abandoning the misconceptions in regard to the inherent existence of the I, one does not remove them with regard to the aggregates. And I wonder if that's what I heard correctly, how does that square with the statement that once one has perceived the emptiness of one phenomena, without having to employ separate reasoning or much effort, one can understand the emptiness of all phenomena?
okay. Say that again.
If it's the case that after having abandoned the misconceptions regarding the inherent existence of an I, if one still has not abandoned them in regard to the aggregates, how does that square with the statement that once you have realized the emptiness of one phenomena, that without making special effort or using special reasoning, one can understand the emptiness of all phenomena?
Okay. Again, 강사기 딱신 각나 강사기 딱신 강사기 딱신 숭치나 강사기 딱신 각나 추기 딱신 인지민지 각기 요래 가그래 이는 두칙도 각기
가베 twe지들이
두칙도 가그래
님보치그래
님부칙 강사기 딱신 독소나 강사기 딱메 독소나 데니 추기 딱신 두칙도 독일의 배에서
대도고 말했어. 가서 돈을 샤바인바. 강사 다음에 내가 돈을 쳐이 다음에 제스도 고래서 가서 앞차인바. 임바.
You know, what was the second part of that? That one.
If one doesn't remove the misconceptions with regard to the aggregate after one has removed them regarding the I, if one still has that doxy related to the aggregates, how does that square with the statement that once you have understood the emptiness of one thing,
Okay. Yeah. 치키톤이 도소나 치키톤이 도소나 뜨니 감체기 돈이 또 그래서
또그 말이.
또그 말.
또그 말이. 봐.
what
진짜
이 시기압이
그래.
그래.
내 도에서 되겠어 그래서. 강경의지 대신이 도마 대인의 대신이 통 시작이 되는데 다 최직이 돈이 또나 아니 최식 되게 아니 돈이 또위 준전한테 아니 생기도 배워 잠지 또위 된다는 말도 최직이 또나 최답이 돈이 또더 말이 봐 나를 길바데 아니 너라 차왔다면 제지던도 아니 최생기 돈이 또 두고게 되네 강경의지 대신이 도마 대인의 대신이 통세 So
that verse says something like, by knowing the reality of a single thing, one knows the reality of all things. That's the verse. And the rest of it was like if you know the emptiness of one thing, you know the emptiness of everything. So what that is referring to is you can't take that sort of just on face value. Rather, what that's indicating is that once you've understood the emptiness of anything, or let's say the emptiness of the I, or the absence of self with respect to the I, then you can, that same understanding, when you shift it onto other objects, then you don't need some new form of reasoning or something, some new method to understand that selflessness or emptiness with respect to other things. So it's the sequence by which Rinpoche said initially, the sequence by which you come to understand selflessness is first understanding the selflessness of the person, then selflessness of other phenomena. So there is that necessary sequence. But so that statement in the 400 verses is that it's basically that the understanding that you have with respect to with one object, you can, when you subsequently apply it to other objects, then you don't need to employ some different kind of reasoning or whatever in order to understand that.
Oh yeah.
Parketsuke, the parketsuke, the gatsupjig drabadi parketsuke.
팔된 수대.
말에 parketsuke.
편지 규제.
parketsuke.
관세. 아니. 팔기 추지에서 팔이 깨왔다 술 깨왔다 사실 되니 봐. 그러나 팔이 깨왔다 술 깨와서 아니 팔이 깨와 편지기 때문에 연락 중이 지당 미리 깨와 편지기 때문에 연락 중이 두와 어떤데 연락 중이 되기 미리께와 편지기 레테기 머리보다 머리 뵙고 나라베 레테기 제라 아니 살께와 편지기 레기 미수네 아니 제위 파데 파게 죽그레스 라 파르게와지 라 출제에서 간라 살께와 편지 머리보기 그나라메 가서래 두시기 레데 술 미리께와 편지기 레지도지 미수네 제지 두고 보도 출제와 잡아 땡제 차지 말에 땡제 차시하래 그 주바다 지고 말에 와 강사지를 주위를 뭐写个 말에
So this goes back to what we were discussing earlier today about the way in which these different sets of dependent originations,
강사지를 주초그래 들어와
different sets of dependent originations as far as the production of different lives operates within the continuity of a single person. So let's say at present we're born as humans, and during this human life we create the karma to be reborn as a human again in the next life. But in the interim, we produce the karma out of ignorance, and then we engage in the activity, the karma, that establishes the potential to be reborn as a god in the next life. So already in this life, we've created the karma to be reborn as a human again, but intervening before that human life was actualized, one has created the karma to be reborn as a god. So the next life, then, one is born as a god, but within that life as a god, the karma to be reborn as a human is that you created earlier in that first human life is activated. So that's what's being referenced here by where it's the wording in the Tibetan is like sort of like forward birth and reverse birth or something like that. It's hard. I don't translate. No. And so what's happening there, it's referring how, like in the initial life, you're born sort of forward into as a god, but then in that next lifetime, you're sort of like, it's as it were like drawing the rebirth as a human from the previous life when you were a human and initially created the karma to be reborn as a human. Is that, yeah?
근데 지금 편지기 주당 방대기 빨아라 제가 좀 맞춰요 말이 편지기 주당 방대기 가서 방대기 빨아 제가 좀 맞춰봐요 말이 와 다치들에 저 미리저 편지기 내지 싸지가나 안에 저 치갈 내가라 미리저 편지기 내들 쇠 맞다 와채 랑기처럼 아마 살기와 편지기 내사의 편지기 내디 내그 바자여 왔더라 될라 쇠 답지잖아 니께와 치마되라 안 살기 깨와 가서 민수네 아니지 부티제지 거기 깨에 파지 된지 주고 와라 주지 삼바 미리께와 편지기 내디 제수 살기와 그 사이 때문에 된지 주송아 파르께와래 파르게 와제 이리와 다양한 나시 전에 술도 깨워 샤쳐 그래
술도 깨워
술을 와 아마 살기와 편지기 내지 사제 팀마주바체 밀기와 편지기 내지 사연에 안텔라 파잖아 술 근데 술 주바로 봐 다다지 나시 전에
So the parki tsukigi
아제 주제 근데 찬이 유나
직디 double Europesa.
이제 저거 거세.
슝 Europesa.
나한테 대나시 파지 주지를 쓰고 말해도 돼 요아래. 가소래. 파지 주지 쓰더니 요 말입니다. 간자 요아래. 나 다 된다 되래.
That's the
아직
meaning.
주제세 저희들이 여러분 하고 뭐.
So, I mean, this actual terminology may be not employed so much in other texts, but as far as the basic concepts here, that one is like you create karma for a rebirth. During the first part of your life, you create karma that if it was sort of left to its own devices would entail rebirth in a specific kind of life, let's say as a human. But later in your life, you create some other karma that actually produces that next life. And then, but in that next life then, the karma that you created earlier in your first life can be actualized and produce the next subsequent life. So the process of rebirth is interrelated in that way, in that you at times you're sort of like you produce a rebirth for your next life in this life. At other times you sort of like draw from a previous life the karma that is going to produce the rebirth in your next subsequent life. And that's how the chain of birth and death is interrelated.
판로 춘로 쓰기도 와. 팔찌 쓰기. 그래서 다들 팔찌. 그래서 전다 댄디 차리니체. 댄디 차리니오 되기 살찌지기 댄디 차리지당 미리지기 댄디 차리지기 이 예위네. 다 살찌지기 미리지기 팬지기 레디 줍차네. 아니 팬지기 레데라 쇠마다와 살찌기 팬지기 레데라 쇠dom지 잠바 아니 미리지와기 팬지기 레디 예수 가르쳐 받으려라 강사되라 살찌기 댄디 주바 연장 아니 팔찌
So that's meaning there is, it's like going to and from in a way is in the words there, but being born in a sort of forward direction and drawing your birth from a previous towards you is literally what it's meaning, like drawing the rebirth towards you. Here it's talking about effectively how two segments of dependent origination are connected to one another, and specifically how two lives, a life is a dependent origination, how two lives are connected to each other, and how you can string them together in an extended sequence by karma. You create karma earlier in your life, which that would have produced the next subsequent life, but in the interim, you created some other karma that it takes precedence and produces the next subsequent life. But in the course of your next life, then you at the end of that next life, the karma that produces the following life is actually the karma that you created at the beginning of the first life in that sequence of lives.
Oh yeah, that 돈이 또 파연되라. 다 대도라와. 숨바 돈이 또 파연이 누가 탐제세 봐이 최디테나 또 매봐. 세디기 가르쳐 오래서나 강식 또나 최 강식이 땡기 아니 내로 또 많이 또나. 그봐 내로 또 많이 강식 또나. 누가 탐제 세비 파연전지다 파연전지세 파연전지 최단중 대부러 코코라 파연전지 최단중这位他们家的他当茶瓦是但就这位他是的真正的这瓦的茶瓦对吧注意对吧你推呢这个동아 탐제 세바의 최지 퇴네 세 밀림보 태권한이 되나 또제 매봐 태권한지 동반지 되나 또제 매봐 캐와 미지비 내라 아니 캐와 가 태권한지 되나 캐와 미지비 내라 아니 당와 타 캐와 아니 태권한지 미지비 내라 당와 타 내루 용수 미시비 7 아니 텐더 림보데 내로 용서 메셔봐 이제 태권하지 되나 딱그래.
So then the next in the text comes, it's the third of the outline, this part of the outline, and it describes the benefits of understanding or realizing emptiness. So this is verse 39. Having listened to this Dharma that puts an end to suffering, the undiscerning, afraid of the fearless state, are terrified because they do not understand. I'm just afraid of the fearless state. Here in the version of the text that's actually we're reading here, it says actually these undiscerning people or ignorant people are actually develop animosity or aversion towards the fearless state. So it says, having heard this, in just a freer translation of the version we're reading here, is that having heard this Dharma, which is the total elimination of all suffering, the undiscerning have animosity towards the fearless state, and because they don't fully understand it, they are terrified. So the commentary here explains this, that that which, if one understands it, eliminates all suffering. So the Dharma, which has the benefit of eliminating all suffering, and this Dharma is specifically dependent origination, the profound dependent origination. And it's dependent origination, which is free from all conceptual elaboration. Conceptual elaboration here refers specifically to the conceptual elaborations which misapprehend things as being real. So having heard this Dharma of dependent origination, which is free from all of those extremes of the extremes of the conceptual elaborations that grasp things as being real, the commentary here says that foolish people or the ignorant, because they don't have discernment with respect to the meaning of reality, so and these people in turn have animosity towards the condition which provides fearlessness to the wise or the educated person that understands reality, and because they don't fully understand the condition of things, they are terrified.
그래서 가서 최대한의 도매바서 자단지라 림보 태권하니 전라 도바매바데 태권하니 기ten 무슨도 안에 도비开와 미지비 내라 당와타 내로 용서 미지비 안에 치자고 야도 자제지 자단지라 야나 도바매바 태권하니라开위开바도 샤바 차오 세데 그래서 우리서 림보세 태권하니지 전라 도저매바 세데 도바단 제바 도저开많이 받체 도바매바 세라 도바매바데 태권한 영어숨도 도와
There's another way to read it.
림보 태권하니 도 영어숨도 도위 아니 가서래开와 미지비 내라 세 태권하지 전라 내 미지비 내라 당와타 내로 용서 미지비 치자고 시간들은
So there's two ways to read the verse here. One can read it as we just did, where it's that these foolish people here, or people that are not undereducated and do not possess the discernment that, with respect to the meaning of reality, they develop animosity or aversion towards the subject which provides fearlessness to the wise or the educated person. And because of not understanding it fully, they are terrified. Because they don't understand the way things are properly, they're terrified. But there's another way to read the word in the text, which says, without discernment. You can read it a different way, in which it refers to a non-conceptual understanding of emptiness. And in that case, then you would construe the word, instead of saying without discernment, you would read it as without conceptuality, or without conceptual thinking about it. And then in that case, it would be a qualification of, with respect to the wise person the person who is wise or skilled in reality. If you read it that way, then you understand that as a adjective modifying the wise person who understands reality free of conceptualization. In other words, has achieved direct realization of emptiness.
Oh yeah. That then then ma che gan da yang siwa tabi ran si xia ba te la. Ani phumo sama mi ne ga ji din ji sa ba la chi ba mi ri ba. Da then sab je sum mi ye na ne, right? Din ji ta sab je xi ji du wa. Da tang bo te la phumo sama mi bi ne ga la din ji sa ba la chi ba mi ri ba te la. Phumo sama me ba se de la 상마 매바다 학제다 상매 세자에들라 자단이요래 다들 좋아 상매 냥데 세들라 학제 냥데 세들라 좋아 단다 주보들 가서 란주바 매지 란주바기 풍부 상마 매바 스나 당보 풍부 학제 냥데 톱 동아지 풍부 상마의 제와 세가라 동아지 풍부 상마의 제 사마점 뒤에서 사마매 비한테 적고하래. 마 란주바글로라.
So here, this leads into the next subject, which is an explanation of the nature of liberation. There's multiple subtopics here. We won't go through all of those in detail at this point. We'll just meet them as we come to them. But the first subtopic is that even in the state of in which there's no remainder of the aggregates, it's improper, or even in the occasion when there's let me start over there. It's incorrect to have fear with respect to the extinction of misconceiving things as being real, even in the state in which the aggregates are eliminated without any remainder. Now, where it says aggregates are eliminated without remainder, here we have to explain what is meant by this. There's 풍포 학매단 학체.
풍포 사마다 제위 냐데다 사마 매비 냐데 세데 다 주다 소소고 저좀 만보 제제 천도 된저이나 안 동아지 풍비 사마 맞아 봐체 풍포 사마다 제와다 풍포 사마 매봐 자고 자지 좋아 다 샘점 바당 란주 받저이나 아니 동아지 풍포 사마다 제와다 동아지 풍포 사마 매봐 자고
So there's two kinds of nirvana that have to be explained here. There's nirvana in which there's no remainder, or let's start with the nirvana in which there is a remainder or leftover remainder of the aggregates. That's the first type. And then there's nirvana without remainder, meaning that there is no leftover portion of the aggregates with respect to that second kind of nirvana. The different systems of Buddhist thought explain these categories in different ways. So if we take, first of all, the first two schools of Buddhist thought, of philosophy, the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika schools, they understand the aggregates here such that, first of all, one actualizes nirvana with remainder, meaning that there's some remaining, the aggregates remain when one actualizes that first level of nirvana, and then subsequent to that, one achieves nirvana without remainder, and in that form of nirvana, there's no form of the aggregates whatsoever. That is, they understand the aggregates as such, as that which is either there's some leftover form of the aggregates in the first form of nirvana, and no form, the aggregates are completely annihilated, or the continuity of them ceases when the nirvana without remainder is actualized. But when we turn to the upper schools of Buddhist philosophy, the mind-only school and the Swatantrika Madhyamika schools, they understand here aggregates in a different sense, because they refer to the suffering aggregates. First of all, there's the actualization of nirvana with some remainder of the suffering aggregates, and then subsequently there's the nirvana without any remainder of the suffering aggregates. They qualify the aggregates there with the modifier suffering for a special reason.
자좀 토마 톱디 잠바 아니 나마 내년지 판비 풍보대 야자와래 와 아니 자좀 토디 가라 녀몸비 지바기 응에 이비 톱지 좀니 자좀 토바다 녀몸비 지바 빵 탐제 빵 바래데 아니 녀보 공경기 풍보대 랑자 대여와 인장 아니 자좀 비지 자좀 탐토마 토마티 녀몸비 니몸 방배 방바데 사제냐데 디지지 풍보데 동아지 풍보 상마다 제와 시과데.
So here then if we explain then the first of these forms of nirvana with remainder, and we're talking here in terms of the upper schools, or actually this applies to the lower schools too, that now nirvana refers to the extinction of the mental afflictions. And if we're speaking in terms of the higher schools of Buddhist philosophy, it's the elimination then of the obscurations which are mental afflictions. And when one has completely eliminated those, one actualizes nirvana. But in the initial portion of that person's life, when they initially actualize nirvana, there's still the remainder or residue, you could say, of the aggregates that they were born with in that life. So those, the remainder of those contaminated aggregates persists, even though they have eliminated the mental afflictions and the obscurations that are mental afflictions, entirely extinguish them.
텐디 자주 토마타비 풍보데 차와 두시 기동아 마이 두시 기동아 인 차와 두시 그 말인데 내년 그 땡차바데 매와 인자 녀몸베 땡차바 매와 인자 차와 두시 기동아 마이 쓰고야다 도스타지 차와래.
So here then, returning to the point we were discussing earlier about how those remaining aggregates for the arhat are still they're la duchiki dunga yin kyaba duchiki dunga.
차와 두시 동아 매. 두시 동아 인.
So they're called constructed suffering or created suffering, but they're not, this technical term again, the pervasive created suffering. That is, why is that distinction made? Because the so-called pervasive created suffering, or suffering, created pervasive suffering, is the aggregates when they're a basis or support for the mental afflictions, and in that way serve as a basis for continued rebirth. So in the case of the arhat, who has actualized nirvana with remainder, they still, the aggregates, or the continuity of the aggregates still persists. And in that sense, it's because it was produced by karma and mental affliction. Therefore, it is they're of the nature of suffering, and they're constructed by or created by karma and mental affliction. But they no longer serve as the basis for the mental afflictions so as to produce rebirth in the future.
어디 아니 텐다위 아니 자좀 바데 하체 바데 동아지 풍부 하마다 제비 자좀 바데 아니 꾸지 두제 땅지 잠바 아니 개월년지 잠바 아니 가서래 타베신도 빼면 벌써 유지랑 시기리네 바셔거래 년이 좀 그죠 많이 바체 내가 뭐라면 그 타베신도 아니 다신도 제와 뭐라면 제와 그 제와 가들 연결해서는 뭐라면 그 왕그 제와래 봐
So then that arhat then at the once they've actualized nirvana during the course of their life, then at the end of that life, when the continuity of those suffering aggregates comes to an end, then they separate from that. And they take up a body which is of the nature of mind, a mental nature body, and out of the force of aspirations, prayers, they're reborn into a pure realm.
Oh yeah, that did from the Omisha to the chair. Then the Pumbulama maybe young there down. 사제다 제베 냥데 세제 컨디스그레사나 농아지 풍부 상말을 제마제 샤고아 말에 아니 가서래 대낭원주와 누비 쳐봐도 쳐와 사면 냥데당 아니 대낭원주에 원주와의 제비 쳐봐도 쳐와들 사제 냥데 수고래 그러와 인단디 사제 나제세 다 사면 디나니 다진데라 사제냐데 원도 전에 응을 돕네 사면냐데 제를 두고 와리 다다지마 다디 탄주루라 아니 가서 사면냐데 원라 돕네 사제냐데 제를 한 거래
라 대낭
원주와 dendu 나와
So here now this explanation that we just given is that which is held by the lower schools of Buddhist philosophy, Swatantrika, etc. Now, if turning to the Prasangika school, there's a different definition of these two categories of nirvana with remainder, nirvana without remainder. According to nirvana here, or I should say, according to the Prasangika school, one first actualizes nirvana without remainder, and then one actualizes nirvana with remainder. But the meaning of these two categories is quite different in that they understand the nirvana here as, in the first sense, nirvana without remainder, or the remainder, which is this nirvana has or doesn't have, is the manifestation of the So here the what is at issue is the appearance of things as real, the manifest form of that appearance. That is, when things are appearing as real, when that is actually manifest within one's cognition, then that is called nirvana with remainder. And when that appearance of things as real is not appearing within one's cognition, the manifest form of it, rather, is not appearing does not exist within one's cognition, then that is nirvana without remainder. And so, according to, and in that second case, when things appear, things appearing as real is not occurring, actually present within one's cognition, then that also la genti ninang nupa
렌주도 나와.
dendu nangwa
아래
ninang
렌주 나와. 원주와 니도 쳐버리자. 원주와 여바다 매바다나.
So here it's, or to simplify that, one can say that the two forms of nirvana are distinguished as to whether or not this appearance of things as real is present or not present. So in the case of nirvana without remainder, there is no appearance of things as real, whereas in the case of nirvana with remainder, the things are appearing as real. That is manifest within one's awareness.
다 그늘에 선랑 되는 원주도 단지 그늘에 선나 가서래. 자좀 톱감이 가사대 아니 녀mom부 된지 녀mom부 언니 챙겨기 안에 동반이나 제지도 잡으면 냥바셔 냥샤 이시래. 저 냥샤 이시. 돈이 무슨 도비 이시래. 냥샤 디잉아래 안에 자좀 공부한테 토고래. 자좀 그 공부 토마타비 강사기 규지 참 토마타마 태양 동반이나 제지도 냥바셔 냥샤 이시래. 그래서 냠샤 이시에 때라 디기라 텐더를 가사 니오도 토마타바기 토감의 가사 대당 자주 토마토의 가사기 규지 롱원주와 대라 냠샤 이시만도 요 말에 냠샤 이시만도 명하체 냠샤 이시에 때라 된두고 나와 요 말에 인장 이난 가서 대낭 대낭 원주에 누비 쳐봐도 쳐봐 스티티
dendu ninang
된두지 나와 된두 나와 원주와 명하래
So here, the way this works then is that the person is just about to become an arhat. So in that portion of their life, when they're about to become an arhat, right when they're ready to become an arhat, they enter into meditative absorption on emptiness. And in that session or that period of meditation, when they achieve arhatship, at that period, during that period, they're single-pointedly absorbed in emptiness, and within that meditation session or that period of meditation, there's when they actualize arhatship, they're single-pointedly absorbed in, or they've produced the gnosis, which understands reality in a non-dual fashion, and thus, within the context of that cognition, there's no appearance of any of things as being real in any way whatsoever. What's happening then is at the beginning of this meditation session, there's still the sort of inclination to misapprehend things as being real, and that in the course of that meditation session, one is generating the antidote to the misapprehension of things as being real. And so when that antidote overcomes that misapprehension of things as being real and eliminates it, then the gnosis that exists at that time, it has as its content nothing but emptiness, and therefore there's no appearance of things as real in any way whatsoever. So that then is what is defined as nirvana without remainder, because what is what is not present is the manifest or appearing form of things as real. Things don't appear as real to that, established as real to that cognition.
Oh yeah, that didn't Nyamsha tell her, jet up the Dante Zamba. Any Nyamsha tell her, land the jet up the Dante Zamba. Any Nyamsha don't you want to talk about law less, Kunzo Namjaki law, want to Chuti Zamba. Kunzo Namjaki law teller, then you are it. Then you go now at the law want to choke you at it, to this Zamba, jet up the Chanjikana. In that, 가서 대남 문제보다 제일 제바도 채와 세대래.
군속도
냠샤라 단도 잠바 아니 군족 위치에 그 나바진지 세와 온도 주고 와레스. 군족 남전 그 세와 대라 된도도 나위 세와 임베 차고 다들라.
된도도 나위 세와.
군족 남전 세라.
So that person who's actualized arhatship within that meditative absorption, then they've in the course of that meditation session, or at the last portion of it, when they have achieved this non-dual direct realization of emptiness, there's no appearance of phenomenal things as being real, because the only thing that appears or that exists within that cognition is emptiness as such. And so then when they come out of that meditative absorption, then they enter into what's called the subsequent period after that meditation practice session. And then in that subsequent period, there's phenomenal things appear to the person. They cognize phenomenal things. And these phenomenal things appear to them again as if they were real. That appearance of the things as real reappears for them after they've come out of that meditation session.
Oh yeah, that and that the Sami said tendency check. Pumbo Lama may be Nagamna, the Disabala Chipa Miriba, say Pumbo Lama may be Nagati. That and that's what Tomataba de la Asha, Tanju la Cheka. That de la Casore Jaba Miriba said de la Pumbo Lama may be Nagala, Dinzi Sabala, Jiba Miriba said de la that Kachiki. Jabina Maimba Mutub days, Jibakeba good name, member Mitub de Jigres, Carres, and Tony de. Don't buy any down, Datan Dagu, you cabaret, Datan Dagu, you are married, Datan Dagu, you men, Datan Dagu, Merco Grace. Take you Jiba Jessings, Datan Dagu, take you Jiba Jessing. Tapa Tomne, Pombo Jusa Jang Mena. Any tinny jibit near, you know, Jimmy Jibit near, you know, Senator Parobogi, or Magilamna.
So here then, so that's the differentiation in the Prasangika school between that saying that nirvana without remainder, which is this single-pointed absorption on emptiness in which there's no appearance of phenomenal things, and there's nothing that appears as if it was established as real. Is nirvana without remainder, which a person actualizes first when they achieve arhatship. Then they come out of that, and the phenomenal things appear to them again, and they appear as if they were real to them again. So this, with this background, then the text continues.
난년도 되와기 간도고 그래서나 아니 가서래 사자냐게 내가 생각을 톱니 풍보다 째와 년도 동아지 풍보 쳐봐자 풍보다 째와채 화면 양한도 내도 잡아 풍보 주인 쳐봐 되고 그래 풍보 주인 쳐봐 그봐 풍보 주인 너무 많아게 내가서 사자냐게다 난 화면 양도 그래 대 인자는데 대 타바도 하나 풍보 주인사자 매배서 화면 양대도나 풍보 주인 주인사 매발 쓰고 그래.
So we have to, before entering into the discussion here in the text itself, in the commentary, we have to go back and say that we were discussing the difference between nirvana with remainder and nirvana without remainder. There are three different ways of explaining this. We mentioned the first one, which is that held by some Shravaka schools. And then we discussed the way it's held by the mind-only school and the Swatantrika school, and then finally the Prasangika school. Now, going back to the way it's held by the Shravaka, some of the Shravaka schools, the way they define nirvana with remainder is that the remainder there refers to some remaining portion or remaining state of the aggregates which are appropriated through mental affliction and contaminated karma. And then the way they define nirvana without remainder is they say that it's the actual stoppage or the cutting off of the continuity of the suffering aggregates, the contaminated aggregates. So they posit that sort of way or that understanding of nirvana without remainder, that it's the stoppage of the stream of the contaminated aggregates as such.
Oh yeah, that's it. Oh, yangan de la dida gu meba juna che michi. Yangan de la dida gu meba juna che michi. Yanden de wa che jang. Pongbo sama same ji yang de la, same yang de la, sa jie ji pongbo de gu meba de ba juna de la che ji ji michi.
Again, somebody, Pumble Hlamik Yang Dina, Dinzen Zeppel, oh no, the Girmasong, the Dumbly,
The Chintasong.
Girmasong, no.
And that did about they in bar, night as you last in bar. Drop in there, member YouTube days. Drop at Jiggy, stop in there, member YouTube days at the Kachigilagua. Drop in there, member YouTube day. Don't you day, Datan Dagi, you Kaba Yina, Stombani Yina, and Datan Dagi you. Datan Dagi or Tombadi Yina, Datan Dagi or Megores. And the tea, Data Dagi, Mana T. and it's Chipa Jigres. Taba Tom Naja, Pumbo Jusa Jamana, Tini Chipi Ne, you know, Sena. The Kajik of that.
So here, there's a discussion that goes on then about the nature of nirvana and the relationship between in the state in which there's no remainder of the aggregates. Here in the commentary, the subject is that it's inappropriate to be frightened by the extinction of grasping at things as being real in the situation in which there's no remainder of the aggregates. And then the way this is presented is in terms of a dialogue between an opponent and then our response to that opponent's position. So first is given the opponent their qualm or hesitation about the way in which we're talking about nirvana and the extinction of grasping at things as being real. So here the opponent says, it's not the case that this emptiness is something which is not a subject for giving rise to fear. That's multiple negatives, but it's basically the opponent is saying that emptiness is a subject that is a subject of fear. It's something that's frightful. And the reason they give for that is that emptiness, since it's the negation of the objects which are the self and that which belongs to the self, emptiness is that negation of the object of the self and that which belongs to the self. And out of that, because of that, or by that reason, it gives rise to fear. Then the opponent continues saying, when one has obtained liberation, if there's no form of the aggregates to any extent at all, then that is something that is to be frightened of. So the opponent presents that kind of argument here. Then the verse is presenting the response to that, and this is verse 40, which says, here's the reply to that opponent's position. You are not afraid about the claim that all this will not exist in nirvana. Why then are you afraid when told that here, that the threefold process of samsara does not exist? So that's what the Master Nagarjuna replies there.
Oh yeah. 다들라. 뭐뭐 아니요. 자 엄마가 뒤라발라. 자발라니. 냥한데라 뒤다고 매바준에 체미지. 어 가르스 그래서나 년된대와 최장. 풍보사마메 비냥을 대비 내가수 스탑. 풍보사마 냥을 대비 내가수 사제지 풍보 뒤고 매바 주나. 아니 철지지 미식. 고란 되고 알아봐. 풍보사마메 비냥가라 아니 사제지 풍보 매바 주와이나 철지지 미식. 대라 미제나 풍보사마메 비냥가라 사제지 풍보디 뒤고 매바 대발라 미제나 갑디 하메 냥대지 내가라 갑디 다 하메 내가지 내갑디 탄주와란 게체 니모스보데 매바샤발라 세끼르꾸네 니모바다 레이꾸네 니모바다 니옴베꾸냐 메모버스 매바샤발라 체지디 지디 지발 체데 지고 말에 세테나 동바니라 잡바 미르소.
So here, then, the explanation of the verse is that it's addressing some Shravaka schools, certain Shravaka schools that hold that nirvana without remainder is the complete cessation of the aggregates. That's their definition of nirvana without remainder. And however, they're realists in the sense that they hold that things exist as they appear in the sense of being established by means of their own intrinsic identity or intrinsic existence. And because they're realists, they're saying here that that emptiness, which is the absence of that kind of existence, is terrifying or suitable to give rise to fear. So here the response that Master Nagarjuna is saying is that you Shravaka schools, followers of these Shravaka schools, you say that in the nirvana in which with nirvana without remainder in which there's no remainder of the aggregates, you say that nirvana is such that the entirety of these aggregates which are contaminated are completely non-existent. That's your position with respect to nirvana without remainder. So why are you not afraid of that? Why are you not terrified of that kind of nirvana? If you're not afraid of that kind of nirvana, then why are you frightened on this occasion when in what we're speaking of as that which is without remainder, in which we explain that it is devoid of the three forms of the three kinds of mental afflictions. Here, where it says the three mental afflictions, that's referring three mentally afflicted things. That's referring to the three portions of the samsaric process that we mentioned earlier, ignorance, karma, and the birth and so forth that arise out of the ignorance and karma. So why are you not frightened of that? Why should you be frightened of our explanation that those three things don't exist? Therefore, it's inappropriate for you to be frightened with respect to emptiness.
Oh yeah, did me bashabala cheni chita chibache said ani hakosonti o hamanyanda jinga nyumosu me bashabala chiri chibacheta ta dini dinzi tada saba tamba tela sum yebi 당보 대라 동아 세비 타바랑신지 주바 코자 미지소 스나 동아 세비 타바랑신지 주바 연장 아니 년도 대와다 좀 동아 세비 타바랑신지 주바 저 돈이랑신지 타바랑신지 주바 연장 코자 미지소 세나 나 대라 타라 다음에 풍부매 가데 타바 텐다데 다당 풍부 싸와라 니니 쳐고 지미가 세 인자 타바랑신지 주 타라 다음에 풍부매 세가라 타바라 가사게다 매칭 라 풍부랑신지 주와야 매배 아니 타바 가데 타바 다 타다 까바 텐단 되라 타바 생게데 가사 그 당신 까바 텐다 지라 되그라 나다 풍부니 보다 라시지 주와 싸와라 니니 최고대 최지지 미가데 까와르 그래 나다 풍부 라시지 주와 까와라 미가바 치야요 말에 라시지 주와 까와라 까와 치르 그래 동반이로와
So then, then it continues by saying, by presenting a response on the part of the opponent here, the Shravaka schools who hold that things are established by means of their own intrinsic existence. They hold that nirvana is also established by means of its own intrinsic existence. So they say that the opponent here would reply to what has just been said in the previous verse by saying that because nirvana, the liberation, which is the extinction of suffering, is established by means of its own intrinsic nature, we're not afraid of that. So that's what they come back with in response to that. But then the Master Nagarjuna replies in verse 41, we say that in liberation there is neither self nor aggregates. If you are fond of that or intent upon that kind of liberation, why are you not pleased with, or why do you not take delight in this teaching, the teaching that refutes the self and the aggregates here as well? That's his response. So here it says that we're saying that within liberation, there's no self of the person, and there's also no aggregates which are established by means of their own intrinsic nature. And since that's the case, if you accept, the Shravakas here, accept that liberation is the stoppage of the entirety of the self, if you accept that kind of liberation, then why are you not delighted with this the position here that the aggregates and the self and the aggregates are not established by means of their own intrinsic nature? You ought to be pleased and take delight in this kind of teaching here, because you yourself accept that in the state of liberation, there are no aggregates at all.
그래서 오야 가서래 풍부랑시 주와 매배 가데 타바 아니 나 타다 가바 텐달라 될라스 나다 풍부랑시 주와 사회 최고 아니 사와라 최 니니 최고대 최지지 미가데 가와르데 타비 내가 타바토비 내가라 풍부 매바도 그랬어 다지바 타바스에가라 하면도 양알 대와 태잖아 풍부 주의도 받고 와봐.
So the point here is that the Shravaka schools accept that in nirvana, the continuity of the aggregates has ceased. Therefore, the aggregates, the self and so forth, the self that's based upon the aggregates doesn't exist at all, is non-existent within the state of nirvana without remainder. That being the case, why should these people that hold this position not be fond of the position that we're presenting, which says that these aggregates and the self don't exist by means of their own intrinsic nature. Since they accept the non-existence of the self and the aggregates with respect to that nirvana, in the state of nirvana, there's no reason that they shouldn't be pleased by the teaching which eliminates the notion that the aggregates and the self are established by means of their own intrinsic identity.
다 되라 가사에 풍부 까봐 사매도 냥알렌 내와 태세나 풍부 까봐도 풍부 매봐 되니 타바래서나 이와 타방오버 미대반이 타방오 미대반이 풍부 까비 타바더니 오버래서나 풍부 까봐기 오버더니 아니 타바래서나 어다 타방오 미대반이 냥한 대와 왜매봐 미나테 정을 갈라요 냥알렌 대와 선다 고된들 고고라 라시르바 라시 주변 오 갈라인데 말에서 냥한 대와 오 많이 돼서 냥알렌 대와도 고된데 라시 주변 오 갈라인데 많이 말에서 그래서나 오 매바 라시 주와 예바 말에서 오매 라시 주와 예바 말에서 냥한 대와 오 매바 미나 정을 갈라인서
So this leads into the next point that liberation is not a functioning thing. It's inappropriate to hold that liberation is here. The term technically is an existent. An existent implies. Or that word existent refers to things that function, that are created and themselves produce effects. So liberation is not an existent. And so here they say that, so if the opponent comes back and says to here in this argument, that that very liberation, which is the stoppage of the aggregates, is an existent, a functioning thing, then the reply here is given in the next two lines of the text, which says, which line is verse is that? 42, yeah. Nirvana is not even non-existent, so how could it be existent? Okay, the two terms here, existent and non-existent, have special connotations. Existent refers to a thing that functions and is itself produced by causes and conditions. A non-existent is a thing, but it's a thing which is not produced by causes and conditions, but is a negative. So here it says, since the reply in the text is that since nirvana is not even a non-existent, how could it be an existent?
That's right.
No, on the. So then,
냥은 대와 오보 응외매밤 미나 정을 갈라인세 갈라 냥알렌 대와데 미르밤백 밤바 고텐데세 봐 대랑신지 주변 오 갈라인데 말에 상신 주오 말에스 마임바 굉장히 가르래서 오 매바 랑신지 주여바지와 말에서 냥대도 응외매라와 오 매바 랑신지 주바 여바 마임비세 응외 랑신지 주바 여바 마임비세
So here then, when we say nirvana refers to the abandonment, a special kind of elimination or abandonment, which is the abandonment of the obscurations which are mental afflictions. This specific kind of elimination or abandonment. So an abandonment or the absence of something is not an existent in the sense of being a functional thing. Rather, it's a non-existent, a thing which is not functional. It's a negation. So here it says that the commentary explains that kind of nirvana, which is the elimination or abandonment of the mental afflictions, how could that be an existent which is established by means of its own intrinsic nature? It isn't. our position is that it's not the case, that it is an existent established by means of its own nature. And then the reason that's given for that is that even non-existence, that is non-functional things, things that do not produce effects and that are not produced by causes and conditions, themselves are not established by means of their own intrinsic nature.
Oh yeah. That thing to take la. Tawa share ke na ga so ka de tong me chun sa ye tong ba chun sa ye ba chu. Me dong chun sa ye me na tong ba ye ba ka la ju sa song do wa. Ka de tong me chun sa ye sa ga la. Ka de rang xin ji ke tong ni an ne rang xin ji chu be tong ba chun sa ye ba me na sa.那当年让心就特别多，当年让心就特别多，把竞赛者要把民呐，呢，安尼要把民呐，安尼提当把你给等，东西缺钱的，东西缺钱的，安尼卡说的，当把下过来，是缺那么的，安尼卡说的，让心当大美的，安尼缺他们这个缺钱继承你的。缺他们这个当他们的缺他们这个继承的印章东西缺点的，安尼当他卡说的让当把当大美英国的东西缺点当把当大美印的咱把安尼太来代表当年太阳安尼让些就当把英国的是过来的，我。
So here then, the proof text, which establishes what we've just said, is a verse out of the basic wisdom, basic verses on Madhyamaka by Master Nagarjuna. And there he says that if the non-empty existed to some extent, then the empty would exist to some extent. Since the non-empty does not exist to any extent, how could the empty exist? So this is here to explain this verse. It's referring to the relationship between emptiness and that which emptiness is based upon. All things. Emptiness is a universal characteristic of all things. That is, it's a universal property or characteristic that qualifies everything. So the relation,
东西缺钱，他在东面竞赛也，东北竞赛也把就是是多啊。他这个搿个时候嘞，啥呢？东面啥呢？缺他们这些，让先去准备东北。让先去这个竞赛界面那是吧？第一，他在东面竞赛员，东北马英把竞赛员那是，第二嘛的没把开的啥呢？第一等东西缺钱的是吧？东西缺钱的，按你看说的，东北你当大个看啥个大个东北英国的，东北当大没把英国的，英国的开的啥呢？东北当大没把这去继承你的，去他们家东西大没把送过来的话是，去他们家东西大把人的等缺钱这样东西大没把的，
So here the basic point of this is that it's stating that there's nothing that is not empty. That is, because emptiness is a universal characteristic of all phenomena, every phenomenon that exists is empty. Therefore, there's nothing whatsoever that is not empty. And this applies when we look at emptiness itself. It's designated upon, or it has a basis which is upon which we identify emptiness. That is some phenomenon which is has the characteristic or quality of being empty. And the base there is likewise empty. That is, it's qualified by that property, emptiness. So there's nothing that is not empty, whether one is speaking.
别人看啥都有价值了嘛？看啥？ 강사 그때 돈이데 라신지 주 라신지 주바 동바 준사자 여바 미세나 다때 강사데 강사 그때 돈이 그때 강사데 아니 가서래 동바다 다음에 봐 인고래서 강인래서나 동 다음에 이거 최 탐제 그 지천이래 최 간대지 이나요 동바다 다음에 봐 인고래서 그러봐 연장다 가서래 같은 미동 준세 동미 준세 연나 동바 준세 여봐 저 가서 아니 돈이 그때 강사데 아니 라신지 동바 준세자 여봐 갈아주대서 매고 그래서 이제 되면은 최지 천이 마상 와서 정 거로 봐. 이제 때 강사데 동화다 다음에 바래.
So here then, this is discussing then the relationship between emptiness and the base upon which emptiness depends. So if we take, for example, a person, the person is the base, and emptiness is the property that qualifies it. Here so we find the emptiness of the person based upon the person. That is, its absence of intrinsic existence. Absence of intrinsic existence is depends upon or is found within the base, which is the person as such. So the person as such is necessarily empty of intrinsic existence, is devoid of any kind of self in the sense of intrinsic existence. Therefore, the base itself is, you can say, is empty of intrinsic existence. There's nothing that is not characterized or qualified by this property or characteristic of being empty.
일단 돈이 라신지 미동바 마동 미동바 예나 아니 뒤때东西강사店啊라신지 미동바 여고 그데 아니 여거와래东西강사 때 아니 동바다 당에 봐 인바데 최지 천이래 최지 천이 인장 아 강사店동바다 당에 봐래 인장 강사 동바다 당에 봐기 다게 미동바 준세자原门나 미동 준세原门나 미동바 준세자 여바 마이나 아니 동바 랑신지 최외 미동바기 동바 여바 칼라주 랑신지 최외 미동바이 동바 여바 칼라주
So here then, this is just as the base is qualified by emptiness. We have to say the same thing about emptiness itself. The emptiness is not established by means of its own intrinsic nature. That is, it doesn't exist on its own without depending upon the base that it qualifies. So there then, the argument here is that if there was something that was not empty, then there would be something that is, if that which is, if the non-empty existed to some extent, then the empty would exist to some extent. So what that's saying is that if something existed such that it was not empty, it was not qualified by intrinsic it was not qualified by being devoid of intrinsic existence, then the empty would exist by means of its, that means exist by means of its own intrinsic nature. It would have some kind of autonomous intrinsic existence on its own. So, but that cannot be the case, because just as the base upon which emptiness depends is devoid of intrinsic nature, then equally emptiness itself is devoid of intrinsic nature, because it doesn't stand on its own. It's not autonomous. Rather it depends upon the base that qualifies it, that it qualifies. So thus we say that all phenomena are that emptiness is a universal characteristic, a characteristic or property that qualifies all phenomena.
你早就算。
Is that clear?
야. 미통 중에서 예면 나 동바 예바 가라 줄 세가라. 아니 랑신지 뭐좀 추배 미통바기 아니 동시 체전 준세자 예바 마이나. 가서 동시 체전데 최인장 지천이 동바다 담에 봐 인고로 봐 어디 소라. 랑신지 추배 미통바기 아니 동시 체전 준세자 예바 마이나. 아니 라신지 주위 아니 가서래 라신지 주위 동바여 봐 갈아줄 라신지 주위 동바여 봐 갈아줄 아니 돈이 라신지 맞주바래 스기로와.
So then the second half of this is that this verse from the basic wisdom is that since the non-empty does not exist to any extent, how could the empty exist? So here, of course, we have to understand this such that when we say that the non-empty does not exist to any extent, that's making the point then that all phenomena are qualified by emptiness, that is, they are empty. Therefore, there's nothing that is not empty. Since that's the case, how could something that is how could the empty, that is emptiness in the sense of something that exists by means of its own intrinsic nature, how could emptiness be established by means of its own autonomous or intrinsic nature? This is impossible.
Oh yeah, 당외지 된대라.我把没真把300年的写下我是。 那可上日本主就比龙吉长一把，我没用写白，当你全部那把错，是我的地当，我不是几百的，我不没真白，是的，我不哭啊，我不没把娘的，是吧？我不没把让心基础吧真把，是的，我不没真把，让心基础吧真把的定真钱，我让心基础吧，哭让心基础吧真把的，娘的让心基础吧真把，真的是真把3把的娘啊的带我一把写把瞧我，3把的帮把过单的钱。
So then the actual meaning of this discussion above is given in the second half of verse 42, where it says, Nirvana is said to be the cessation of the notions of existence and non-existence. Or another way to translate that is Nirvana is said to be the extinction of the misapprehension of the existent and the non-existent. Okay, is another way to translate that. Here, the first one, the existent, is referring to samsara in the sense of functioning things that arise due to causes and conditions. The non-existent is referring here to nirvana. Did I say samsara for the first one? Yeah. Okay. The second one is non-existent, is referring to nirvana, which is a non-functioning thing. It's not produced by causes and conditions. So misapprehension of these is holding them to exist by means of their own intrinsic nature, and the extinction or extinction of that kind of misapprehension or misconception, grasping at them as existing in ways that they don't, is what is called nirvana. So, and then the commentary explains the same thing in a little more elaborated words. It just says that the extinction or stoppage of misapprehending the existent and the non-existent as if they existed by means of their own intrinsic nature should be understood as nirvana.
Oh yeah, that is la. Lota da yang da bi da yu cheba, se loba dawa da yang da bi dawa, loba dawa ke wa da mi ke wa me ba dawa. Da mo ma ba ki, ani da o ka so de le dan ju de. 让心机没住那，让心机没在店里没搞哇，是吧？娘的让心机没住那，娘的没搞哇， 코와 랑신지 마주나 아니 코와 메고와 자와서 제라그 나서 수원 나신 체니 가데 디다 꾼도나 중앙 메신 지바메 파베 덴바 시원나 켈라메바 타와 주루 시체니가나 아니 치다나 그 오디다 탐제 랑신지 트베 동바이나 아니 친한 거 오 메고레 대메나 아니 파베 덴바시 주군중 당 대우 안에 동아 덴바다 아니 람덴당 과대양 랑시지 메나이나 아니 메바 타그레 전에다 뭐마왜 탄주와라 저거와 어디 대대선 거래 양알은 대와 랑시지 메나 메바다와라 덴바 주로셔나.
So here then, the next topic is differentiating the correct view, that is differentiating wrong views from correct views, the correct view. And here, it's the opponent here would be specific, in particular, realist or realists who say that if something exists, it necessarily exists by means of its own intrinsic nature. For them, they say that if things don't exist by means of their own intrinsic nature, they're completely non-existent. And this is the same argument is presented in the Basic Wisdom, in which Master Nagarjuna says that the opponent would say, if all of these things are empty, then they wouldn't arise and they wouldn't disintegrate or disappear. And that statement there of the opponent is making the assumption that if everything is empty, that is, if it doesn't exist by means of its own intrinsic nature, then there's no way for it to arise, and there's no way for it to disintegrate or disappear. Now, if that was the case, then there would be no four Arya realities, no Four Noble Truths, because suffering arises from the source of suffering, and likewise cessation of suffering arises from the path. And so according to the realist, if suffering, origin, cessation, and path are empty, that is, they don't exist by means of their own intrinsic nature, then there's no way that they could exist in any way whatsoever, and there's no way to posit them at all, or one would fall into a nihilistic view which denies the existence of things, period. So the commentary here sets this up by saying that to differentiate the wrong view of this from the correct view, the opponent might say here that if nirvana was not established, didn't exist by means of its own intrinsic nature, then one would come to the position and be resorting to a view which is nihilism.
Oh yeah, 메바타와 랬다면 주로 세가나 체라 아니 메바타와 무슨 담바 아니 주그레 세다추 바로 보기 봐 진짜 엄마 시원라 다 되기 래라 메바 또나 메바타와니 레지드부 메셔바 소나 마잉에 소와 괜히 로바타와셰 세티 가는 사람 아니 로타생한테 간데스레사나 아니 저기 나가서 게다 미게 메다와 로바타와 인 세이가나 개와 메바 개위 대부 남남이 대부 대화당 미게 왜남이 대부 동아 텐다위 가소래 디디기 대부 진지기 주당 대라때네 대부 대다 메바 따야 되라 또나 메바 따와니 내지 대부 메제와 아니 소나 마인바길래 미게와 아니 되게 레불라 아니 가서라 내손의 경계 저버 챙경기 아니 가서래 렌데 메바다 왜 따와대 로바타와 체세 로바타와 라틴데지고 그래.
So here then, the opponent is saying that if nirvana did not exist by means of its own intrinsic nature, one would fall into and be resorting to a nihilistic view. The verse here, the next verse gives the reply to that, verse 43, in which he says, in brief, a nihilistic view is the belief that karma has no effect. So here then it's saying that in
제가 들냐면 로가. 좋아 뭐 좋게 말해. 야, 제가 들냐면 로잖아. 야. 또나 매바다 완에 내지 저거 매셔봐. 새가 또나点把西当滚肉当来当这比这吧说没多两把呢俺们没把打完的现在没把打完赢了现在为来当没把打完跟那边去走了来当那边去走没把没接吧关的吧没给为来呢我来的没接吧给俺们关的给没给为来的呢俺们有推出俺们说那买一笔来미급이 내시 그래 티 저부대라 안로 제바 체배 내송와 시차라 오 텐저이 더와다 미급아 매바 따와디 로바 따와시 아니 도이가 수샤바레
So here then the commentary explains the meaning of this verse, which says that now with regard to nihilistic view, this is a form of wrong view. And the basic form of this is denial of the existence of that actions, karma, produce effects, particularly that produce like virtuous actions or meritorious action produces happiness, and non-meritorious or non-virtuous action produces suffering as the principal results of these actions. So. Here then in the commentary it says that in brief, thinking that the Arya realities, the Four Noble Truths, that the three jewels, that karma and the relationship between karma and its results, things such as this are non-existent, that sort of thought is this nihilistic view. And someone who asserts that, who says that karma and the results of karma are non-existent, there's no such thing as karma and the results of karma, is someone who is disparaging or deprecating the existence, rejecting the existence of karma and its effects. That itself, that deprecation of karma and its results, is a form of non-virtuous action, non-virtuous karma. And at the time of the cause, that is when one is making such a deprecating statement, one is creating non-meritorious karma, and the result of that, by means of that non-meritorious karma, one is necessarily caused to be reborn within one of the evil destinies, lower realms of existence. And therefore, in the sutras, it's explained that someone who holds a wrong view like that is someone who is destined for one of the evil destinies. Let's stop there.
지